Welcome. I am Natalie Lucier, founder of AccessAlly, and welcome to Seamless Scaling. So I am super excited because today we are joined by Lola Pickett, founder of Moon and Manifest. And I am super pumped because we're going to be talking about how to manage your energy as your business grows, as you're trying to scale, as you're trying to become more and more successful. So first of all, for Lola, I wanted to kind of give you a chance to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us how you got into this work and a little bit more about your background.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Natalie. I'm stoked to be here today. So I'm Lola Pickett, and I mentor empaths and sensitive souls to develop resilience from the inside out so they can stop protecting themselves from success. And I came by this work kind of accidentally. It's like accidentally on purpose, because as I began to change my life about 10 years ago and break free from a lot of patterns that were unhealthy, including like how I worked and where I worked, what I was discovering was that as a sensitive person, a lot of the kind of standard coaching and advice and self-help books, like all of them sounded good and they made sense, but I couldn't make any of that guidance actually work. And I felt like there's something missing here, because I'm doing everything right. And yet I continue to kind of stagnate or hold myself back. I had read all the books on that topic too. And I thought there's something really going on here. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's getting frustrated that even though I know what I'm supposed to do, things aren't working out the way that I feel like they should, especially being somebody who comes from a background of high performance. I was like top of the class in my high school, graduated college with honors. So I'm like, I should be able to achieve whatever level of success I want. I have all the societal advantages. So what is going on? And after years and years of research, meanwhile, continuing to grow my business, albeit slowly, what I discovered was that what I needed is the exact same thing that I now teach to my community. And that is to have a more resilient nervous system, at least to start there. Because what I learned was that my body wasn't feeling safe achieving new levels of success. And so no matter what it was that I did, I kept finding myself hitting these like thresholds or glass ceilings that I just couldn't seem to break through. And this is super important for this conversation because we're talking about scaling. And so when you're an entrepreneur who's ready to really grow, you've got to make sure that your body's actually on board with this plan. Otherwise, you can have all the tools and all the strategy and all the tech, all the team, and still have your entire system pull you back, which is going to keep you from showing up as the leader that you need to be. So lots of trauma healing information, somatic awareness, different therapeutic models. A lot of it has gone into the development of the work that I teach now, which is why a lot of therapists and doctors and nurses end up being my students, because they're like, this isn't how we're being taught about the nervous system in kind of the traditional medical model. And they want to know better, not only how to support their clients and their patients, but like how to keep themselves out of compassion fatigue too, because most of the people who are in those kind of helping positions run up against burnout, right? And they don't want to stop doing what they're doing because they know it has a positive impact, but they don't want to do it at the expense of their own health. So the work has become really robust. We've got a big client community. We use your tools to support them. And that's kind of been my journey. And we're in the process right now of scaling up. So I really am excited to dive into this today and kind of talk through some of the things that I've learned.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one of my first questions, and I'm familiar with some of your work, and it really resonates because I'm also, empathic and I feel like a sensitive person. And it's interesting because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs kind of take this path because we can start a business online. We're not necessarily in that day-to-day in-person thing. And that tends to support, our work style essentially a little bit more. But at the same time, when you are bumping up against those levels where you're trying to grow, trying to scale, it kind of pushes all the same buttons. So, what would be some of those things that you've learned or that you'd like to share around the nervous system, especially that people can do to support themselves?
Yeah, there's some really good and simple things that you can begin to practice right away. And the first thing is to really understand whether your nervous system is in fact engaging in unconscious protection. So the three easy ways to tell are: number one, if you're starting to notice that you procrastinate. So people think that procrastination is like a personality trait, or like, well, I just need like really aggressive deadlines and I always wait till the last minute to do things because that's how I am. But what might actually be going on under the surface of that is that it's a way of your nervous system trying to titrate the things that it knows are going to contribute to uncertainty and scary growth. And so what it will do is it will create the state of being inside of your body that leads to the behavior of procrastination. So to solve the problem of procrastination, it's not about like different deadlines or even about external accountability. It's really about understanding, oh my gosh, my body's scared of what might happen as a result of me doing this task and doing it well and giving it its due level of attention and time and energy. And so I need to start there. Like that's where I need to start addressing things and begin to understand, first of all, what it is I might be protecting myself from. And then starting to practice holding yourself in that discomfort. Like being able to be with discomfort, I think is probably the number one leadership skill needed for an entrepreneur, whether you're like out there in the world in an office leading a company or at the little safe space of your desk as an introvert, which I love. I'm so with you on that. But you're absolutely right, right? These same things will keep showing up for you, regardless of how introverted you get to be in your business. So procrastination is one of the signs. The other sign is perfectionism. So a lot of people list this when they're getting interviewed for jobs or like, you know, talking to people like, oh, this is like my biggest flaw is that I'm a perfectionist, because it also means that you are dedicated to doing a good job. So you feel like this flaw kind of like sets you ahead. Um, but it's another pattern of protection, because if you let yourself give into that voice that says, no, just a little bit more tweaking. Let's just like get this exactly right before we put it out in the world. Otherwise, what? Right? What is going to follow that statement? Like, what are you worried will happen if somebody somewhere sees your work before it's good enough, according to you? Because guaranteed your like 70% is most people's 100 million%, right? But if you keep deciding that it's not good enough and therefore continue to work on it instead of let it be out in the world and using the data to make your decisions going forward, you are protecting yourself. You are protecting yourself from the vulnerability that is asked of you by letting things be seen, by letting yourself be seen. And you're also protecting yourself from taking a risk, right? Because if things continue to be perfected, you never actually have to take that risk and let it out into the world. And that's a sure sign that your nervous system is activated. In fact, we all know about the fight or flight responses, right? And there's also the freeze and some of the lesser known ones, such as fawning and fitting in. They all start with F, very conveniently. But the perfectionist drive is a kind of a misguided attempt at a fight response. It's tied to the inner critic. And when you have a really strong and activated inner critic, it's a sign that your healthy fight has become skewed in your nervous system and you're turning it against yourself. And there's other ways that that can exacerbate other problems, physical problems, psychological problems as well, which can really inhibit you from scaling up. And the third one, so we have perfectionism, we have procrastination, and the third one is people pleasing. So if you find yourself worried about what is the client going to think if I really tell them what's going on, or I feel like they're not going to like this price, or, you know, I just need to make sure that everybody can access my work. And so I'm going to offer it for the most affordable rate possible, because that's going to be of best service to my community. Those are some of the temptations as entrepreneurs that we face that are actually tied to the people pleasing response, which in our nervous system is tied to our fawning and fitting in mechanisms. It's our social nervous system that's really invested in acceptance by our community, because otherwise, according to our ancient brain and our ancient survival strategies, we die, right? And so you think that you're trying to create like a fair pricing model by making your work the cheapest on the block. But what's really happening is your nervous system is afraid that you're going to get shoved out of the cave into the mouth of a saber-toothed tiger. And it knows no difference, right? The brain knows no difference between those two things. So we're operating from a very ancient set of neural programs in a modern world that our physiology and our neuropsychology hasn't caught up with yet. So to understand that these things are going on can point to, okay, if I'm procrastinating, if I'm totally being a perfectionist about this website or this lead magnet or this email, or if I'm noticing that I'm really scared about what people are going to think, then it's all an indication that your nervous system needs more support before you grow to your next level. And one of the easiest exercises that I always recommend to people, and I have a video on this on YouTube too, but I'll share it right here because it's like life-changing and it takes literally 60 seconds. So this is a way that you can support your vagus nerve to come back into a state of social regulation where you can feel a little bit safer to participate, to face your resistance, to not need everybody's approval. And it's actually just a really simple physical exercise. The best way to do this is to lay flat on the ground without like a pillow or anything kind of supporting you, just as flat as possible. But you can also do this seated, and I'll do that and show it here where I'm seated so that you can kind of get a sense for what to do. And I learned this exercise from Dr. Stanley Rosenberg, who wrote an excellent book all about the vagus nerve. So if you get nerdy about neuroscience like me, it's a good recommendation. But what he recommends is that you basically clasp your hands like this and then put them right behind your head where your skull kind of meets the top of your spinal column, right? It's called the occipital lobe. So you support your occiput, and you can do this again laying flat, which is best. But what you do is without turning your head, you're going to shift your gaze either to the left or the right. It doesn't matter which one you start with first. And you put your eyeballs kind of as far as is comfortable in that direction as you can and hold that. And you're going to hold that for anywhere between 10 and maybe 40 seconds until you feel either a sigh or a yawn or a little shudder or just a noticeable kind of letdown sensation. And then you're going to recenter your eyes. And again, without moving your head, you're just going to look the other direction. And don't push it too hard. You don't need to like strain your eyeballs. You don't need to be an overachiever with this. You can just move your eyeballs until you notice that same letdown. And then you just recenter your gaze and kind of shake it out and sit up. And you can double check that this worked by looking in the mirror and sticking out your tongue and saying, ah. And what that will do is it'll show your uvula. And if your vagus nerve is properly supported, your uvula is going to hang down right to the center. If you still need to work on rebalancing it, you might need to do this again. It might be tilted off to one side or the other, which is kind of a really cool diagnostic, right? So you can do this yourself and see if your vagus is a little bit out of whack. I like to call this going to Vegas, but not that Vegas. And then support yourself in it. And so whenever I'm like on the edge of a really scary conversation or a big interview opportunity, or I just don't wanna, with something I have to do in my business, I do that. And before I know it, without even really thinking about it, I'm much more able to see myself through, to send something out that's imperfect, to stop procrastinating on something I know I need to do, and to stop worrying so much about what somebody on the other end of the line is going to think about a decision that I want to make. It's a radical tool, and there's so much more available to us. And this is kind of where like my worlds diverge, right? It's like, let's look at neuropsychology and neurophysiobiology, and let's look at the entrepreneur and the sensitive soul and really see how we can put more sensitive and empathic, heart-centered people in positions that are powerful, creating success for themselves, no longer being the starving healer. Like I'm on a big mission to put a whole lot more sensitive hearts in leadership, all around the world in all different positions, whether that's in a household or in a government. And the only way we're going to be able to do it is if we can support our nerves.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I can't wait to go try it now. Like,
Yeah,
I have to go.
exactly. Try it, try it.
Awesome. Okay, so you touched on something that I've noticed quite a bit, and obviously the perfectionism, the people pleasing, all of that I've seen over the years, I've experienced personally, and it's something that I've seen kind of a pattern repeating where people spend a lot of time researching which tech tool they're going to use to launch their course or their membership instead of creating their course or launching their membership, right? And my realization was that it's less ambiguous, right? Doing research around a tool feels like it's something you can check off. You can decide which tool you want to do, or which tool is best for you. And then you never have to launch your course, right? It's not like the hard part of doing the work. And obviously, I think we reach those kind of similar plateaus along the way as we're scaling and as we're growing our businesses. So, maybe for you, it's not picking the next tech tool that you need to, that you're using as a procrastination method against doing the work that you need to do. But maybe it is, reaching out to a bigger partner, or putting on a really big webinar, or putting advertising dollars behind the work that you're doing. So this is super, super helpful and super actionable. So thank you, Lola. That's awesome.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and kind of along those same lines, what would you recommend if someone kind of gets that, like, whether it's nervous energy or they get burnt out whenever they're doing like a big launch or a big promotion? What would be, obviously they will do this exercise a couple of times probably throughout, but what else would you recommend, or how do you deal with it?
Yeah, one of the biggest points of freedom that I have discovered to set myself free from that overwhelm feeling, or just like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. And, not only do I feel overwhelmed by that, but I feel worried about, is it going to work? Right. Like, because especially when you're in a launch cycle, you can be several months behind in your business cash flow wise. And so it feels like everything is riding on this launch, delivering a specific level of results. I mean, I have been there so many times, finally like getting out of that cycle, but it's taken a while. Um, and one of the things that I come back to when I start to go down that, like, oh, but what if? It's another way that we are protecting ourselves, right? Is to like project all of the worst case scenarios and to let ourselves get all worked up and feel that pressure, which is, there are some real factors of like, you need to have your business have positive cash flow. You need to be able to support your team. You need to be able to pay yourself. All of those things are very real pressures, but we layer all this additional pressure on ourselves and create stories about like, maybe we get resentful, right? Like one of the patterns that I've noticed in this kind of growth, this growth process that I've been through is resentment, that me being the face of the brand, me having to be kind of the person that's driving the business forward, leaves me feeling like it's all on me. And that is a story, right? Because the truth is, I have tons of support that empowers me to be able to be the face of the brand and to be the visionary in the business. So, no, it is not all on me. In fact, I have tons and tons of support. So, what I just did there is a skill that you can practice as a business owner as you're navigating some of these more stressful scenarios that you will face as you grow your business. And that is, what story am I telling myself right now? Because ultimately, the stories that we tell ourselves are what lead to our internal state being the way that it is. And that state is the state from which we behave. So a lot of times we're like, well, I just need to change my actions. I just need to feel the fear and do it anyway. I just need better habits. I just need a better strategy, whatever it is. But we need to go deeper than that to address the internal state. And because the internal state is caused by the stories we're telling ourselves, that's where change really happens. So we have to develop a practice. I mean, I believe it's imperative that we develop a practice to look at the stories that we're telling ourselves and not just look for whether the story is true, because confirmation bias is a real thing, right? So you'll find evidence for whatever story you're creating. Like if your story is, I can't do this, you're going to find evidence to support that. Look at all the times where I failed before, whatever that evidence, wherever that comes from. what you want to look at instead is this story helping me? Is this story useful? And when you start to ask yourself that, and that takes you taking some time out from your busy launch schedule and noticing that these spirals are starting to happen and saying, okay, like it's time for me to pause and take a look at, what story am I telling myself? So like, if you want to write down a note right now, this would be a good chance to do it. What story am I telling myself that's leading me to feel the way I'm feeling right now? Is that story helping me get closer to my goal or farther away from it? And what is a different story that I need to practice? Because you don't have to believe it yet. You don't have to believe yet the alternative perspective, but you do have to practice it, right? You do have to practice it. And in the practicing of it, what you're doing is you're strengthening that muscle of self-awareness and self-responsibility, which, if you're going to be a leader, you need to be self-responsible and self-aware. Otherwise, you're just going to, run through people, run over people. You're just going to be the kind of person you are afraid that leadership and success will turn you into. Self-awareness and self-responsibility are going to make sure that you stay in integrity the whole time that you grow. So again, like, what story am I telling myself that's causing me to feel how I'm feeling right now? Is that story helping me move closer or taking me farther away from my goal? What is another story I can choose to practice right now? So those three things are things that I practice all the time. I mean, this goes beyond business into my personal life as well. So hopefully those feel easy and simple and doable to practice.
Yeah, that is amazing. I feel like one of those things that, we all tell ourselves stories all the time, right? And it's kind of our own perception and our own lenses of what we think is happening around us. So I love that, the rewriting of it and just seeing how we can shift it if it's not helpful. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's a really powerful tool. And I feel like it works, like you said, in every aspect of our lives. And yeah, just super, super powerful reframe. So one of the things that we've noticed is that there's a lot of people, like you were mentioning in the beginning, healers, coaches, people who are in the helping profession and who want to make the world a better place. And, a lot of times they are working one-on-one with people, maybe one-to-many. And this is where that scaling thing comes in. So how can we scale as people who want to make the world a better place without always doing one-on-one, or having some one-on-one offerings, but having other ways to bring in income that maybe it would be courses or memberships or other more scalable types of offerings without losing some of that magic, right? Because I think there is a lot of magic to being able to deliver something from yourself, from your gifts and the things that you want to share with the world without losing that kind of personal touch. I know you've done that really well. So what are your tips for that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is to create your work, whether it's one-on-one or whether it's a one-to-many option, like a course or a program, to create the work that comes from your heart versus what you think you should be doing. Like, that goes for marketing your one-on-one services as a coach. Like, maybe you think the only way to succeed as a coach is to be a business coach. And then what you decide is that because you haven't had a certain level of business success yet, you really can't be a business coach. And if that's the only way you're going to succeed as a coach, probably what you need to do is learn more about running your business so that you can have the business success, so that you can be a successful coach. But all of that is coming down to thinking and believing one way of being is the only way of being, the only way to succeed. So again, like, underneath it is a story that we need to take a look at. And you want to make sure that the body of work that you create is deeply authentic to who you are, the impact that you want to have on the world, not based on a belief system that doesn't align with you, right? And so I've done that myself. I've totally created classes that I thought I should create. Like, I'm a great designer, I'm a good marketer, people pay for those things. So I should probably just stick to being a web designer for one-on-one work and teaching marketing for one-to-many work. But because that's not who I am inside, it's not like my mission in life to teach those things, even though I can and I do have those skills, those programs didn't work. And the one-on-one work led me to feeling burnout, resentment, frustration, because I wasn't really lined up, right? I was lined up with should and could versus what like really is my soul mission here. So that's like my first piece of advice. But when it comes to then having that work be your mission, be in alignment with who you are, and then getting it out in the world in a way that doesn't lose the magic, that keeps it feeling personal, you have to be willing to invest in systems and tools that are going to empower you to do that without taking more of your time and more of your energy. So the way that we have designed our programs now is infinitely scalable. I don't do one-on-one hardly at all, only for people who are already in my ecosystem. And so that means that I'm not having to actively market a bunch of different programs. And because we've invested in team members and systems, software that allows people to feel like this was built for me. This uses my name. This talks to me at exactly the point in my journey that I am right now, because this company, this team has invested in getting to know who I am. Right. And so they get an email, for example, my students 24 hours after they purchase that says, right now you might be feeling all kinds of things, because we've done research into every single customer's journey post-purchase. And we know that 24 to 36 hours after they say yes, even if it's right for them, they're going to start questioning their decision. And if we don't meet them there, they're going to feel like they're getting dropped. Right. And so we have content in our course, in our pre-course content that they get as soon as they purchase. And we've set it up to really mimic and mirror what happens in the nervous system to empower sustainable change. And we can only do that because we took the time, not too much time, to research what tools were going to help us do that and make the full commitment to it and not look back. So one of the points of protection that can come up is going back and questioning your decisions as a leader. And so there are, like, let's use AccessAlly as an example, because we do use your software. We could sit here and go, well, like Kajabi's got some new features, and oh, Samcart just launched this course platform and they're saying it's like the simplest thing ever. Do we need to like change everything up? But that is such a waste of time. Because when I'm sitting there trying to analyze whether I made the right decision or not and not fully committing to it, what am I not doing? I'm not selling, I'm not marketing, and I'm not connecting with my community, right? And so it's to really go all in on those decisions as well. And that's what happens when you have the space to make a quality decision to begin with. And that's one of the things I've loved about AccessAlly is that you grow with us, you listen to us as your customers when we give you ideas or feedback or feature requests. And you've made it possible for me to treat my 100-strong, multiple 100-strong course community students and make them feel like they're the only one in the room. And that is an incredible gift. It means that I don't have to go out there and trade time for dollars anymore. And when we talk about not wanting to burn out as an entrepreneur, not wanting to shut down as a sensitive soul, scaling is probably the best way to do that as a business owner, and figuring out how to create something magical and real and aligned that can support hundreds, if not thousands of people without more from you. That is like a dream come true.
I love that. Yeah, so it's something that, obviously we're very passionate about because, I also did one-on-one web design. I also did one-on-one with clients, and I know the benefits of being able to scale and be able to deliver things to more people at the same time, but without losing, like you said, that magic personalization and that like true, listening of who's going through your content. So that is incredible. Thank you for sharing that. So one of the things that I wanted to dig in a little bit more that you started to talk about was what you loved about AccessAlly and ProgressAlly, and kind of how you've been able to create some of those experiences over time for your students.
Yeah, it's definitely been a tool that we've grown with and that has grown with us. And I mean, the first time we really thought about going all in on group work and creating something that we felt like would be more sustainable over time, AccessAlly was one of many options that we considered. And I kept coming back to one simple thing. And that was, not only is this a tool that will grow with you without penalizing you for growing. For example, many of the other tools out there charge you more the more customers that you bring online, right? And so you kind of get like, sure, you have more revenue coming in, but proportionally your expenses are going up with the tool. Not to mention like other things that you might need to invest in, like team members, et cetera. I'd rather put my money into team members that I can mentor and nourish and that can provide that level of like client care versus paying more for the same tool just because I have more people in it. And so I felt like that was a huge piece of why we were like, well, this is a no-brainer decision for us because we're planning on blowing this out of the park eventually, right? And so we want that ease of like peace of mind, peace of heart, but also because I know you and you and I share such a similar background that I knew whatever you had decided to move forward with as you were evolving your own business was going to be top-notch high quality. And you're a woman-led business, a minority-led business. And I was like, if we're sensitive souls and we're making business decisions that aren't in integrity to what we believe in, that's going to cost us. And it's going to cost us a lot in the long term. And so we keep feeling really good about this decision, not only because the tools you make are awesome, but because like everything that you do, everything that you stand for and the ways that you operate are in complete alignment with what I believe is important. And I really challenge everybody listening to not get swept up by the latest marketing gimmick because some Facebook ad that you see that convinces you that this is the only way you're going to make it, that you really need to sit with yourself, get to know yourself, and trust that when you make choices that are in integrity to what is important to you, that is the only way to create success that feels good. And so we've loved learning more about AccessAlly. We use AccessAlly, ProgressAlly, and PopUpAlly in both like our public facing work and our course experiences. And in fact, our Facebook ads manager had to share a screenshot of how amazingly our ProgressAlly based quiz has been doing as our lead magnet. She's like, you all are getting like unbelievable numbers on this. Not only is it like awesome cost per lead, but like you're getting such great traction on this. And we're seeing that. And it's because your tool makes it so easy to create a very customized experience from a public facing quiz all the way through like what feels like one-to-one support inside of a course. And that's been radical. Plus I'm a nerdy designer, so I don't want to just like stick a template. Although I know a lot of people appreciate that. I want to be able to play around and make the inside of my website feel like this completely like magical, sacred sanctuary of an experience. And I get to do that so much more easily with your tool.
That is awesome. And I totally feel you on the design aspect. I think a lot of people who use AccessAlly are like, oh, we can make it beautiful and make it look exactly like what we imagine in our heads. So that's awesome. And we just recently launched the AccessAlly theme. So if people want to, just get up and running quickly or transition from something else and just make it look good out of the box, that's totally possible. But you can also layer on like different builders and things. So you could still make it look really cool within the theme. But yeah, so thank you for sharing. Yeah, that's really cool. And so, I mean, I feel like we've talked about like so much deep, useful, meaningful things. And, one of the things I wanted to kind of echo that you were saying is that success doesn't come from, picking the right tool or, jumping on the new bandwagon or taking action on what you think is the next latest marketing trend or any of that stuff, but it is really coming down to the foundational pieces. And that is, your nervous system, your body, how healthy you are, how you are operating in the world and how you can show up for your community and your people and the things that you want to create. So I think that is such a great message. And it's a great way to kick off the Seamless Scaling series, because it's really going to be something we can have the whole all the strategies that we're going to learn need to start here. So it's really, really great. Yeah. So do you have any, obviously your quiz is amazing. So do you want to tell people where they can go and find that, or all of the rest of your work?
Yeah, absolutely. All of that is over at moonandmanifest.com. And you can go to moonandmanifest.com/quiz and check out how we made our Progress Ally quiz not only look awesome on desktop and mobile, but really drive leads into our beautiful email space. Like we call it our email temple, right? It's not just like an email list. We really want it to feel like this beautiful healing experience for our people. And so we've been able to do that with Progress Ally so elegantly, and it doesn't take them out of our ecosystem, because a lot of the other things that you might use, like Try Interact, is also great, but it takes people away from your brand. And this creates this seamless experience for somebody who's never heard of me before. And what that does is it creates, on a deeply unconscious level, with somebody who's like cold, so to speak, who doesn't know you very well, if at all, creates this sense that they're held, that this person or business or program or lead magnet is trustworthy. And having that trustability factor established from the get-go is so, so essential. So again, you can see how we do that at moonandmanifest.com/quiz. And that'll take you through the process. And you might just discover along the way what kind of empath you are, even if you didn't think you were one, and get some guidance about how to stop protecting yourself based on how this sensitivity manifests for you, because it's different for everyone.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's such a great quiz. So thank you for sharing that. And it's something we've heard a couple of times from customers of AccessAlly, the trust factor. They tell us that, we trust AccessAlly, and it allows us to create that trust factor with our customers too, based on the experience that we're able to deliver. So that's really helpful. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we're about to end the session, but is there any kind of big takeaway or something that you wanted to share that you think would help people who are on this scaling journey and who want to make sure that they're doing it from a good place, like a good starting place that's a solid foundation?
Yeah, I think that we've been told for most of our lives that being full of yourself is a bad thing, and that it means that you're self-centered, right? But I want to leave you with a thought and a question, and that is, if you aren't full of yourself, who are you full of? Right? Who else is in there telling the stories, making the decisions, running the show? And if that question is confronting or it scares you because you start to realize, I don't know, right? I don't know who's in there, and I certainly don't know who I am. That's where your work is right now. That's where your biggest opportunity is as a future scaler and a leader and successful, sensitive person, which is exactly what I want for you. And I would welcome you to come into my world to learn more about how to get to know yourself, because you matter a whole lot to where this world needs to go.
That is amazing. Thank you for that question. And I feel like, the more clarity we can have about so many things in our lives, but obviously starting with ourselves. I think know thyself is one of my favorite quotes. So yeah, I think that's a huge, huge thing. And I love that you are able to support people in discovering that. So thank you so much for being on with us today, Lola, from Moon and Manifest. And yeah, this was such a great time. You shared some amazing tool. I can't wait to go and practice, my my new techniques. So I can't wait
Go
to.
travel to Vegas.
Yes, exactly. Probably on my floor, but yes, it
Yeah.
will be great. So yeah, thank you so much. Head over to Lola's website, get more information from her, and get ready for scaling from a really grounded place where you know yourself first. Thank you so much, Lola, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have ended the streaming. All right.